I want to start with acknowledging everything going on, right? It's something about a virus happening. Just wondering how you're all doing and feeling, thinking, what's on your mind with this, all the news happening? Need to wash my hands? Okay.
Yeah, definitely washing my hands more. But we've also been Cloroxing our graphic design classrooms, like the Macs, Cloroxing around areas that may be good practice too. Something we've just, consciously been cleaning a little more. So.
Yep. So that's what you're doing. How are you feeling? What are you thinking about?
Thinking about Italy.
The entire country is shut down. Everybody's got some thoughts and feelings about this. Let's hear something. Yeah.
I feel like it's eventually, no matter what we do, it's eventually going to get to, Alabama and Mobile. I feel like right now it's just kind of a waiting game.
Yep. So it's eventually going to come, we got to prepare as best we can. Okay.
There's been a surplus of fruit snack purchases since the virus has started.
Surplus of what?
Fruit snack purchases.
Okay.
There are no fruit snacks. It's the same as Costco.
And cleaning supplies or toilet paper going, that's the latest. If you go on Amazon, the hand sanitizer is 10 times the cost.
Target, you can only buy 6.
So now I want to zero in, though, on what are you feeling? Have you been through this before? So how does that feel?
It's different. It's kind of scary.
Kind of scary. Thank you.
It kind of gives you an idea of what other places go through sometimes, like poor areas or countries where this stuff is more common. It's you never know what's going to happen next.
Right.
You're kind of just sitting there let's see what happens every day.
Yeah. Oh, and Ebola, that was scary on the news, but that wasn't over in Africa. Anybody? What's that?
I was just going to say, you never think of it coming to, I think we've just grown up in such a privileged, lifestyle. You just never think that it's going to come to your front door, Bringing back those Italy kids definitely was...
Sure.
We talked about it in one of our classes. As Americans, we kind of feel like we're invincible to a lot of things, and so we're all feeling really vulnerable right now. And also, we're so divided right now as a country. It's are we really going to be able to join together?
What do we trust? Who has credibility? Raise your hand if you're worried. Yeah? Okay. You should be. We should be, right? And so, because we don't know, there's a lot of unknowns here, and there's risk factors that are scary. And so, like you're saying, I would like us to think about that privilege that we do have. Privilege allows us not to worry about threats. Let me say that again. Your privilege is a buffer against stress, social stress, environmental stress. If we don't have to worry about it, we're freer, if that makes sense. But if we're in an environment where if we don't have those kind of privileges, that's an everyday worry. So what I want to do on this reflection is focus on and think about people that have those everyday worries that most of us have been free from. So the theme today is this term in Catholic social teaching called the preferential option for the poor and the vulnerable. And so what does that mean? So Catholic Church, this was promulgated under Pope John Paul II, this terminology. But basically, we're responsible for putting the needs of the poor and vulnerable first. Religious tradition says is how we handle and treat the most vulnerable is a measure of our moral conscience as a society. And that is biblically based, right? Whatever you do for the least of these, you do for me. That is where human dignity lies. That is the true test of morality according to this religious teaching. And remember, I kind of go back to this all the time, right? In our Spring Hill mission statement, solidarity with the entire human family. There are no margins. How do we erase those margins and go beyond them and in an effort of solidarity? So what I'm looking at poverty, right? And may notice there's a lot of poverty in Mobile. Almost twice the national average. Almost twice. And much higher in the people that you serve, right? In the communities where you go for your service. But let's look at then, what do we mean then by poverty level? $12,000 a year? What kind of, that's the poverty line. So according to federal government, above $12,000 a year per person, you're no longer in poverty. That's pretty hard to live and pay rent and have food. And so that number, if you think like, that's a pretty low bar for poverty. So in reality, it's a lot higher than 22% in Mobile is under poverty. Realistic sense of poverty. Not just these numbers. You talk about families, and they have a long list that goes on and on and on. But the entire family then lives in poverty. So what I want to think about is we're under threat, right, with this virus anxiety, and it's real. Let's think about a lot of different vulnerabilities that folks in poverty experience. Let's break that down. Food insecurity. There are children in our schools that we work with who don't go to school having eaten, haven't had breakfast. They cannot learn without having had breakfast. Biologically, your brain cannot focus on a learning activity. So we have those schools then serve breakfast. But if you live in a house where you do not get nutritious food, in some of these households, they're only getting nutritious food at school. It's very difficult then in the summertime. But if they're getting undernutrition, right, that's going to affect them developmentally, biologically. It's going to set them up for learning difficulties, behavioral problems, lifelong health and mental health issues. I'm a psychologist, and so one of clients that I've seen did grow up in that environment, and when he gets anxious, he overeats because it's a trigger for him. Even though he's not hungry, he knows it, but that's what that has done for him. If you think about housing insecurity, that's not just homelessness. That's unstable housing. We have lots of kids that move every month, and they're in a different school, and that's disruptive for learning. Inadequate housing. There's not running water in many of the houses in the neighborhoods where we go. You ever notice that? Some of these houses don't have doors. Some of them don't have roofs are imploding. They're not technically homeless. But think about the everyday stressor of living in that situation. Think about the everyday stressor if you're not getting food that you need and that your body needs. And then lastly, job insecurity. Hourly wages. If you get sick or a family member gets sick and you stay home, you can lose your job. Or you could lose your job for no reason. Or you don't get a shift. And all of a sudden, the shifts are scheduled out and you're not included. That's it. That happens to our students at shifts at restaurants. All of a sudden, they're no longer put in on the roster for no reason. They don't have to get a reason. In this kind of environment, if we shut down different industries, those people don't get paid. That means their housing is more insecure. That means their food is more insecure. That's what I want to think about, because I have the privilege of having a salary. I will get paid if we have to close school for a week or two. Or I have to be home with my kids because their school is closed, or they're sick, and I don't have to worry about that. That is significant security. We have stocked up. We have food in case we need to stay home. We're good. So these are the things I want to think about. Lastly, in general, because I'm focused on kids, in these kinds of poverty situations, what we call adverse childhood experiences, prolonged exposure to environmental stress due to these insecurities has significant lifelong implications. It interrupts, it raises their stress levels, their cortisol levels. They don't know, they may not have structure. It doesn't affect everybody, but that kind of chronic stress does have a toll on the brain and on development and on health, mental health, learning capabilities, which then sets people up for lifelong difficulties and inequalities. That's what I want us to kind of think about and appreciate. The people that are served by the organizations where you do your service, what are they going through? So these are the questions today. How have you witnessed the vulnerabilities of those that you encounter through service? What daily stressors do they face? Number 2, what are some ways that your community service organization works to support their clientele to offset the impact of poverty or other social or economic stress? 3rd, what are ways through your career or as a citizen that you can work to care for and protect the most vulnerable in promotion of a more just society?